Today I'm going to show you how to make unique snares. So a clap or a snare can be any somewhat tonal sound with a punchy or snappy transient. These can go as tonal as kind of dubstep snares, which kind of emulate real snare drums. But they can also be more kind of like percussion sounds, which can also be made with dubstep snares if you pitch them up a couple octaves. This is like a regular pitch. And this is up a couple octaves. People also use a lot of actual percussion sounds, which have a snappy transient, actual snaps. Honestly, these can be any kind of sound. So I'm going to show you how to get creative with snares. So what I usually like to do is start with samples, but if you don't have any like resource for samples or anything, you could totally start one in Operator or any synth. If you already know how to make a regular snare, you can probably skip this part. I like to set it to a fixed frequency, but I would group this into a rack. I'm going to call this the body, and I'm going to map the frequency to a macro and set the minimum to 160 to maybe 250. This is the range where snares usually sit in. Also make sure your retrigger is on and your voice is set to 1. I'm going to bring down the sustain and the decay. And something I like to do is bring up this initial transient and then bring up the attack. And then to kind of give it a little bit of punch, you can get a pitch envelope. Set the peak to 48 and then bring down the decay. And that makes it really kind of percussive. And if you want it to sound like an actual like kind of perky sound, you could FM it. And you can get kind of creative with this stuff. Now, if we get another operator, we're going to add a tail, kind of give like an impact feel. So we'll get a noise white, bring up the attack. So I'm going to do for all of these is map the individual time knobs. Maybe set it to -25 to 30. You know, the volume of this. Then you could get like a reverb with all sorts of these parameters. I'm going to map the decay, just not have it super long. Size is also a cool one to map. Then to let the body punch through more, we can EQ out the low end. Just kind of shape it a little bit more. Bring down some harmonics. And then we can probably also get like another reverb. Then we can layer it with another transient. So I'm just going to get another noise wall. And you can hear just like having that additional click. And then we're going to basically just bring up all the harmonics. So we're going to get a saturator. You know, also in the tail section, we could get a shifter and map the course to a macro. Maybe set the max to 500 and minimum to 1000. And then finally we can get an EQ and we can kind of bring out the more punchy 200 hertz region. And if you make this like really narrow, it'll kind of ring out more. And I think this kind of part of a snare is a really useful tool to kind of build shit around. And then we can bring up the highs some more. We can group all that together. Then I think it could be cool to map like the gain and Q of that little peak and just cap that at minimum 0. And now we can just like keep on randomizing this if we wanted to. And then I would just save that as a rack like snare, starter, and then we can just build shit around this. So having a lot of variations like to save in your sample library are nice to like have like starting points. And then to make it like more unique, I'm just gonna go ahead and Command B this. So I'm a nut for making things more like percussive, especially in these more like UK kind of drum patterns. I like to get corpus a lot. And this is like a physical modeling stock device and suite. I like to map literally as many relevant macros to a rack. I just don't really fuck with like the width or like the left and right positioning or the spread, but I will do also dry wet. You can do LFO if you want it to be more of like a sploinky snare. But this might be nice if you were like adding like an additional layer to like an existing snare. I'm going to turn off the LFO. And also I'm going to make sure to cap the decay to not like ring out for super long so it's not like super annoying. And then I think it's cool to get another shifter. We can map the fine tune in this case. So we can be like, then we can get a reverb just like to make it kind of like into a room. So I might bring the size down a lot. And to transient shape it, we can get drum bus, which has this literal like transient shaping knob. So if you pull it negative, it will kind of just shorten the decay and make it like kind of like a snappy, like tight sound. But if you bring it to a positive value, it will emphasize the initial transient. And it's fun to combine it with all of the other kind of drum bus parameters. So another thing that you could do to layer, I have this folder full of just like random percussion and foley sounds. You can save this as a search result by going to samples and filter for one shot and foley or percussion, either one, and then clicking this button to save it for later. But I like to kind of add some spice to these. A lot of snares you might see, like kind of like the snaps and like Jack U snare, whatever, will have like an initial click before the actual snare. And this can also kind of make the snare more like tense, like have more tension. And the tail doesn't always have to be like a noise. It could be something reverb. Like I'm gonna try to like make a water splash kind of tail. So something else I might do if you're like into kind of like metallic Sophie, Umru kind of snares, I'm just gonna go back to just this regular snare we had earlier. You can get a grain delay, and this is just a delay that samples like individual kind of snippets of your incoming sound, which is defined by this frequency knob. So if you like pitch it around, you can kind of hear what it's doing. This is kind of a cool texture also, but in this case, we'll bring the time down to 0. And when we bring up this spray, it's going to offset the timing of the right and left signals in different ways. And it's always going to be random. And each time like a frequency cycle is complete, it will be a different kind of position. You'll get some really metallic sounds if you turn up the feedback. And if you play with the frequency, you'll get a lot of more volume results too. So since every snare is going to be random, I'm going to highlight like a small section, like maybe like a half bar, and then Command L to loop it. Then I'm going to get a new audio track, and I'm going to take audio from the snare, and then we can just continually keep on resampling it. And you can also automate stuff while it's going on. I personally like to get my multi-shaper. And you can show the take lanes in Live 12.2 by clicking this little drop down here. We have a lot of them, but if you press enter on any one of them, it will make that one the one that shows up. But basically TLDR, short delay times make shit metallic, and grain delay makes shit more random so the metal sounds cooler. Okay, last thing I want to show that's an unconventional kind of snare trick. I'm going to go to my samples tab, filter for one shot. I'm going to look up impact, and I kind of want something that's like super booming like that. And like I showed with dubstep snares that you can pitch them up a couple octaves, you can pitch this up probably like 4 octaves and you get like a cool percussive sound. And then you can do the same thing and get drum bus. And then I like to get Pro Cube 4 personally. I don't use many VSTs, but this is one I actually do like. And I'll kind of just do like a little either expansion or compression. And I like Pro Cube 4 has this like attack and release kind of control. And it's also fun to just like see what other ones you can get that are more boomy. I do find that sometimes these could come out to hi-hats more than snares, so that is something to keep in mind. That's really snappy, perky. And there is also this plugin called Spiff, which is a spectral transient shaper, which means it might expand some frequencies more than others. But it has this delta mode, so you can hear the difference between what's being like boosted and what is like the dry effect. And this is like another cool way to make kind of perky, snappy kind of snares. That one's kind of crazy. I bet stuff with all this like noisy kind of stuff layered with it will make for good like clap snare kind of things. That one's a little too weird maybe. And these can also be kind of fun to just layer on your regular snares. I didn't really have time to make a full beat or anything, but I just wanted to show this kind of ideology with there's a lot of world possibilities for snares. Some of these racks are in my rack pack. Also check out my Max Devices pack. Also click all the buttons that the algorithm likes that you press.